All right. Well, we're gonna try out this new kind of podcast theme. So today we've got Mark Rittman with us. So we appreciate you being here. Excited to kind of try this out and this kind of dynamic and just really kind of talk about some of our industry challenges. So obviously, we're in the water wastewater industry. And so it's exciting to really have these types of conversations. Somebody like yourself, and really looking at what challenges our industry faces and really kind of tying that into the operational challenges that you see it from your perspective. So again, we got Mark Rittman here. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how many years as an operator and kind of what your position is currently.
I work for City of Huntsville Water Pollution Control.
Okay.
I've been in wastewater for 34 years.
Wow.
Started out when I was 23 years old at the City of Hartselle.
Okay.
And,
Awesome.
and worked there. And now I'm the chief operator of the Western Area Treatment Plant for the City of Huntsville.
Excellent. All right. So chief operator, kind of supervisor of that role. So tell us a little bit about kind of what your day-to-day responsibilities are in that role.
Scheduling, making sure that the data is inputted into the new WING system. Just taking care of it every day, making sure the operators have what they need to work with, and budgets, new construction at the plant.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I know you guys have had some upgrades here recently, so kind of going through a season where there's a lot going on at the plant. So tell me a little bit about your personnel. So how many staff do you have? Kind of your shift makeup, things like that.
Okay. We have 7 operators.
Okay.
And we work 12-hour shifts, 6 to 6.
Okay.
Around the clock, 24 hours a day. And we rotate the weekends. And I got a great bunch of guys that work for me.
Yeah.
I've got some younger guys and I've got some experienced guys. It's got a lot of experience. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I've seen that a lot kind of in our industry, is just that kind of that blend of generations. You've kind of got the younger group that's moving up and you got your more veteran guys that, more experienced and kind of know the ropes. So we'll talk a little bit more about that kind of as we go, but that's good to see that you've got kind of a good balance of folks there. So I think we joke about this a lot, but I don't know that any of us really kind of dream of growing up and being in the water wastewater industry. So tell me a little bit about kind of the history of you when it comes to wastewater operations. It's definitely been a long time career for you. What are some things that you've done, and kind of step us through your history?
I hired with Hartselle Utilities when I was 23 years old.
Okay.
And I got hired into the sewer department. I was out in the ditch laying lines, and my boss come out there and said, "Hey, do you think you can pass the wastewater test?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, get in the truck." He carried me out to the brand new wastewater plant that Hartselle had. The grass wasn't even growing yet. So it was a brand new plant. And I said, "Sure, I'll try it." And ended up going and passing the test and becoming a wastewater operator.
That's great. That's great. So started at the very bottom and kind of worked your way up over time to the supervisor role. So that's great. So kind of, I guess, talking about our industry, and obviously you made an incredible career out of this. What are some of the parts of the job that you're most passionate about?
The most passionate part, and at first when I hired in, it was with Hartselle. I needed a job, I needed money, I needed insurance, and that's all I was thinking about. But as I've grown in this career, I'm an avid fisherman. I want to make sure that the waters in Alabama are clean and we're able to use them for recreation and sports and all that kind of stuff. But that's my passion, is to make sure that we're treating the water as best we can.
I love that. A lot of the folks I talk to in our industry, I think that's really the core of what it comes down to. We get into this industry, we realize kind of the level of responsibility we have. And we hear out of sight, out of mind a lot, right? But our industry, the boots on the ground guys that you have working, every day, nights, weekends, holidays, rain or shine, that's really, I think, kind of the essence of what we're trying to do. Is we're in a role that ultimately affects, our livelihood, the quality of life, the water that, our kids are drinking, all the way to, the water that we're fishing and swimming out of. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's really a good mindset and perspective. I know we sometimes, a lot of times, you lose sight in the day-to-day work, but ultimately I think all of us, the common denominator is that we really do want to see things better. There's a big sense of responsibility there too, that a lot of the operation staff carries that, quite frankly, I just don't know that the public is very well aware of. So
Right.
yeah, so I love that. So talk about that. So supervisor role, you spent most of your life in kind of this operations field, 24/7. It never sleeps, it never turns off. So when we talk about it, as we talk about industry challenges, like what's one of the things that maybe keep you up at night?
Inclement weather. Anytime it storms, I think about the plant. What's the flow doing? But mainly the safety of the operator that's there, because they're there by themselves. And if we're going through a storm or inclement weather, I'll be calling the plant and making sure that the operator's okay, that he don't need anything. And there's been a lot of times I've gone in to be with them during storms and
Absolutely.
things like that.
Yep. Yeah, that's an important perspective. I mean, I think when we all, our pillow hits the bed at night, and not necessarily in this world, you sleep good, and you just don't realize that there's a whole world moving out there, at night,
Right.
keeping things going. So I think it's important for, as we start to talk about, public awareness of our industry, I think it's important to remember that, there's always somebody at the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. This is kind of a little bit the same, but really kind of starting to dive into some of the challenges. I mean, what do you think, kind of when you think about your operations role, maybe you think about these younger guys that are boots on the ground? I mean, what do you feel like is one of the most important aspects of being a wastewater treatment plant operator?
To have a feeling of ownership, that's your plant, that's your house, that's where you're going to spend most of the time, and you've got to have a sense of ownership to make sure that it looks good, it's operated well, and you're proud of it.
Yeah.
There's you got to have that pride, and that's one of the main aspects of being an operator, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're there by yourself. There's not somebody there all the time telling you what to do.
Right.
That
No, you're right. I mean, I think that's kind of when we go back to that responsibility aspect of, there's things that are going on, every day at a wastewater treatment plant, and ultimately these operators, they're the first line of defense, to make sure that things are right. And I'm sure that's probably one of those things that the younger operators kind of have to learn is, they probably came in just like you did. It's just a job, right?
Right.
I mean, it's just a way to make money, but then all of a sudden you realize that you're kind of in a career trajectory, and then you starting to hone in your skill as an operator, and then also really, like you said, start to take responsibility, for all aspects of the plant, and truly own that. I think some of the best plants that I've been to, some of yours as well, is just that when you get everybody to kind of buy into the big picture of what you're trying to do,
right.
Then you can really start seeing things, everything from the way the operation goes to the way the plant looks aesthetically, you can really start to see the changes.
Right.
So I love that. Okay, so today really what I want to try to do is talk about industry challenges. We constantly the industry's changing. There's new challenges that I feel like are rising every year. Something new to talk about. But really what I want to talk about is kind of from that utility management perspective. Me on the consulting side of the business now, from an engineering perspective, you got folks like us that are trying to deliver, design products to make your life easier. Obviously you've got your sales reps and manufacturers, but really, I feel like you've got a true, value of this conversation because you see the challenges every day from an operation perspective. So what do you feel like is kind of one of the, I know we'll talk about multiple today, but what do you feel like is one of the greatest challenges kind of facing our industry now as an operator?
Well, one of my biggest challenges is maintaining the workforce, keeping operators coming in,
Yep.
and keeping up with the technology that is coming out.
Okay, great point. Yeah.
Every upgrade I've been through, I've learned from new technology that's out there that we can use, and it's amazing what all's out there now.
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective. So, it's interesting you talk about kind of like the information technology, like the automation. I'm sure the plants look and operate a lot differently now than what they did when you first started in your career.
They do. As far as the technology part, the plants operate the same way they always have. Mm-hmm. But now you just have more tools to be able to look at, and that's the big thing is looking at it and not depending on it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's something that is definitely a challenge. I think especially when you have, you've got multiple people, multiple groups that are really working together to try to, deliver a final product. It's like, okay, what's that balance between, all the bells and whistles, fully automation to truly respecting the fact that at the end of the day, that operator on the ground has got to be able to utilize the tools that you're giving them. So I think that's great. So so what are some of the things, just kind of getting in the details a little bit on the IT and automation, like what are some of the things that you've seen change in the operations, from an automation perspective, just kind of throughout your career?
Well, when I started out, we had manually raked bar screens. You would spend first hour at work raking the bar screens off, putting the screenings into a wheelbarrow, and we just finished a upgrade at the headworks. It's designed for 90 million.
Wow.
And everything's automatic.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff is great. Mm-hmm. But being able to keep data, hot WIMS has been a big help for us. Mm-hmm. When I first started, we had a huge bid sheet that was for the whole month.
Right.
On the lab, in the lab.
Yeah. And
we wrote down all of our numbers, and then we would take that at the end of the month and get all of our DMR data together.
Yeah.
And
a lot of old school hand operation, pulling data together, things like that. Yep. So I think what's probably the biggest takeaway really, and kind of I think both of our feelings on this is, I think there's a place in the operation side where automation is helpful. Obviously if you're creating SCADA systems and you've got the ability to see and monitor what's going on at the plant, that's a big help. And obviously these younger operators, they're kind of more in tune with some of the IT side of things, and so they naturally react to that. But I think the big piece that we really want to talk, really stress is that at the end of the day, it's never going away that they're going to have a certified operator at a plant, right? That human factor of what we do every day is very, very critical.
That's exactly right.
So talk about a little bit of maybe it's your plant or some of the plants that you've operated. What is that balance? If you walk in, you've got a SCADA screen, maybe you've got some pumps that are running on VFDs. Like, what is that balance between using the technology that you have versus still being able to kind of get out there in the field and see it?
Right, and at City of Huntsville, we still require operators to make rounds every 2 hours.
Okay.
And we have a round sheet that they can go by and check stuff. But the SCADA is great as far as knowing what's going on out in the plant. But it doesn't replace the operator going out and using their ears, their eyes, their nose to know what's going on in the plant.
Right.
You can't depend on what you're seeing on the screen. The biggest thing to me the SCADA has helped is lift stations.
Gotcha.
Because now at the plant we can go and look at a lift station and know exactly what it's doing. Well, our flow is getting up, what what's this lift station doing? Back in the day, we used to come in, rake the bar screen, and jump in the truck and go check 12 lift stations in Hartselle.
Yeah.
And you had to physically get out and check the lift stations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they put red lights on them, where if there was a red light, we got out, and if it wasn't, and now you can pull up every lift station you've got and look and check the lift stations without having to physically go.
Yeah, that's a great concept. I mean, it's really, really the SCADA systems, that gives you kind of a real life, real time look at really what's going on. And I think, one of the things that, I've kind of seen you do over time is, what you said. I mean, really even taking ownership of, what is the flow, in your system, right? I mean, all the flow ultimately in the system that's coming to your plant, you've kind of got to have awareness of what's going on, right? I mean, if you see a huge decrease in flow at your headworks, being able to go to, that pump station SCADA and seeing, okay, well, is something turned off, or, is it, and vice versa, when you're in a situation where you got a lot of flow coming in, you're going to those lift stations and trying to figure out how many pumps are running, so that the SCADA piece, I guess the benefit is that you really can see more of your system in real time and be able to understand kind of what's going on and have a little bit clearer picture. Yeah, so that's great. So, I think kind of a transition, to a different challenge is really kind of the conversation leading into training, right? So you've got all this new technology, you've got automation. You're constantly having to kind of stay sharp at what you're learning, the knowledge that you're bringing. So, you stated that kind of like training the staff is kind of another, critical industry challenge. So talk to me a little bit about how training has kind of impacted your career as far as development goes, and then what do you do now to train some of your younger operators to create those good, better opportunities?
With the technology part, I think it's very important to have older operators, more experienced operators working with some of the younger ones, so both of them can see and learn from each other.
Yeah.
It's not just the older operators, hey, do it this way, and I do it because I'm telling you to do it that way.
Yeah.
They can learn from each other, because I've got some that are whizzes on programming PLCs,
right?
And helping out that way. But then I've got older ones that know, hey, it don't need to do that. You need to see if you can program it to do this.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good balance. I think that's why we're really living in a good time of that kind of closing that generational gap, because I think what these younger guys don't realize is the value that they have in that mentorship of the older ones. And then same time, the old dog new trick thing is kind of like, hey, your older operators, the folks that you've been in the business as long as you've actually seen those changes over your career, and you're seeing some new technology and kind of new ways to think and consider about operations. So, that's great. So one of the things I want to talk about kind of specifically with you, I think this is probably a big industry challenge, is really just the idea of new operators, into our industry, and kind of the certification programs that come along with that. So obviously, major industry challenge, right? Hiring and training the next generation of operators. So tell us a little bit about kind of the operation, kind of training and certification process that you guys have, and maybe kind of how that's changed a little bit over your career.
The City of Huntsville Water Pollution Control has developed an apprentice program. So now when they hire apprentices in, they could be going to construction, maintenance, or into the plants. They could be going anywhere. So they come into the apprentice program and they learn all phases of that. Starting with passing their 1C, and then the ones that have the aptitude might go to the operations side and the maintenance side, if that's what their strong points are.
Yeah.
And same way with out in the field.
Okay.
And it's worked really well.
Okay.
I think that they've done a good job going through that. And it's an 18-month course.
Okay.
That they go through and study. When I was coming up, we had these little bitty New York manuals that were about the size of a TV guide.
Yeah.
And didn't have pictures in it like the California books has got. But that's what we had to study. And they only gave the test 2 times a year. They gave them at the AWPCA conference, and that's the only time you could take it. And now you can study and sign up. I've got one operator that went and did it all on his own. He studied on his own, passed the test before he ever come to work for water pollution control.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then some have gone through the apprentice program, and it's changed a lot on how to study, what's on the test. The first test that I took in 1988 is when I took my first test. And it was fill in the blank, multiple choice as far as matching, not multiple choice, but matching.
Yeah.
And it was tough. I failed in like 69 the first test I took.
Yeah.
But I ended up passing it. But we had one guy in the state, Charles Falk. He taught the classes and he wrote the test.
How about that?
And
definitely
so
come a long way. Yeah. And I think the key there is, we talk about the industry challenge of training and certification process. I think what you guys have done is, creating, that whether it's an apprenticeship program or it's just something that's a little more intentional on the front end to really kind of create a path for these new operators. Because again, like you said, I mean, some are going to have, the aptitude or maybe go in a direction of maintenance or collections. Some may decide, hey, we want to go. So giving them options on the front end, getting them to see the whole process, but then really building those milestones, of achievement in, whether it's maintaining a CDL or, passing the grade 2, then up to the grade 4. Like if you create kind of a roadmap for these young operators, it seems like that's been successful for you guys to ultimately get the certified operators in place. So yeah, there's no doubt that's a huge challenge, I think, for a lot of utilities, is trying to create a system and a process to get new folks in. So in talking to that, what do you think kind of we have to do? Obviously, we've been in the industry, we know the value of the industry, but you take maybe somebody from off the street that doesn't really realize the value of what we do. I mean, the wastewater treatment plant operators, they have direct responsibility that kind of affects our community's quality of life. It's a huge task, huge responsibility. But how do you think we kind of keep the pipeline open to kind of continue to feed new people into our industry? I mean, it's obviously a challenge, but getting to these newer operators, the younger generation, like what are things we need to be doing to try to go after those folks?
I think we should be able to take take advantage of the high school career days.
Okay.
Go to the high schools, talk to all the high schools now have classes for not just going to college, but for trades.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that we should be able to try to take advantage of the high school kids.
Yeah.
We do plant tours at the plants, and I have some kids that are third graders that will come. We do several homeschool groups that come through, and then we do high schools and UAH. They all come. Yeah. And we give them tours through the plant, and they learn what we do. They see that it's not as nasty as it sounds. Oh, your dad works at a wastewater plant.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, really, you're kind of like, you're almost redefining the value of the job.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think when we talk about, public education, getting the younger kids involved, at a younger age to understand, what that process is. Because I think, for me, I think I've really kind of seen the industry kind of play into that out of sight, out of mind theory, right? It's like, okay, well, if everybody else thinks we're out of sight, out of mind, then that's just what we'll be. We'll just be out of sight, out of mind. But really, the only way to truly sell the value and make people appreciate the value of what we do every day is that public education piece. So I love the fact that you're bringing kids into the plant, teaching them about it. I mean, you effectively, if we're doing that, even if we just got one class in every year, you do that across a decade, you're changing you're literally changing a generational mindset on what we do, and it's a small piece, but I think that's something that we're kind of charged to do, is to educate the public in a healthy manner on what we actually do. So that's great. So the last thing I did, I actually want to talk through some statistics, and I think this will lead into some conversations. But we talk about public education being a big deal, right? I mean, the reality is, we know in our industry there's just not a lot of people that know what we do every day. So I want to read you a couple of statistics related to that public awareness, and kind of tell me how you think that affects or at least relates to public education while we do it. So the first one is in the United States study in 2018, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies estimates that wipes, so flushable wipes, result in about $441 million a year in additional operating costs for clean water utilities. The reality is that most people just don't understand how things work. So do you agree with that? And what things have you done to kind of help educate the public? So you talk about your tours. What things are you doing to really kind of make that awareness?
Right. And, all of the groups that come through, we talk about the fog, fats, oils, and greases. And so they understand everything they put down the sink is coming to the wastewater plant.
Yeah.
And I agree that
it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
And really all that is in my opinion, that really stems from just basically industries, manufacturers, and the public. They just don't realize what we do on a daily basis,
right.
Or they would realize that that's effectively putting more challenge on the clean water side of the industry. So
right.
This is the one I really like. So we talk about just the mindset about our industry. In the U.S., an average internet bill is typically considered slightly cheaper than a cell phone bill, while a water and sewer bill is generally significantly lower than both. So bottom line is, we're paying way more for cell phones and internet than we are clean water. So with the average cost around $75 a month for a cell phone, I guess my question is how do we flip the script on this cost, right? I mean, there's no question that clean water is a critical, service to our communities. Why are we paying more for a cell phone bill than a water bill? And how do we kind of educate the public to make them understand, really with the value of
water? Cutting the water off for a little bit.
Yeah.
And they will,
yeah.
And then they'll be missing it.
That's
it's like
right.
You said, out of sight, out of mind. People flush the toilet, turn the water on, wash dishes, wash clothes, and they don't think about the water.
That's right. Yeah.
But just the public information, if that was a commercial on television, that they could run during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe start waking some people up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think the politicians necessarily want us shutting the water off, but I mean, you bring up a good point. We just don't realize the value until it's gone, and we hear some of these worst case scenarios. The Jackson, Mississippi's of the world. We'll Flint River, Michigan. Like we hear these things, and it's like, well, it's not happening in our community. But the reality is, the same challenges are faced with our local utilities and operators. Trying to make sure that we maintain that level of standard. So I just think when we start talking about, rate increases, and we think about, okay, our industry, we're not susceptible to inflation. We're not susceptible to trying to hire, people that are, obviously talented and that deserve, the higher criteria salaries. I mean, those things are important. So, I mean, with the cost of our, business going up, then ultimately that's the cost of the service going up. So just the education process behind that.
And that goes back to public education, that we need to get the word out so people can see what we actually do.
Yep.
And it's not free.
Yep. That's right.
It costs to make good water.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's a great aspect. And I think I really do feel like that, people, if they understand it, they begin to value it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think I'm sure everybody that walks through your plant has a completely different mindset about it, just spending an hour with you. Yeah.
Right.
So That's great. All right, here's the last one, and we'll kind of close up. But this one's definitely interesting. I think this is probably what should give us hope as an industry. But the study shows that Gen Z students are choosing trade over college. All right, so we've kind of flipped the script. I hate to say it, but I'm technically in the millennial generation, right? But the narrative to us was, hey, do what you're supposed to do, go to college, get a degree, and you'll be set for life.
Right.
Never have to worry about anything. We told a whole generation to do that, and now we're starting to see the ramification of kids going and getting $150,000 in school debt, just to be able to really not even have a secure job. So
Right.
the fact that that's flipping the script, and these younger guys and girls are actually going to trade schools. It says enrollment in vocational training programs is surging as overall enrollment in community college and four-year institutions has fallen. So the author writes that basically the number of students enrolled in vocational focused community colleges rose to 16% in 2023, which is its highest level since 2018, since they've been tracking it. So, and another cool statistic is that students studying construction trades rose over 23% during that time as well. So programs like HVAC, vehicle maintenance, repair, things like that. So I guess the question is, how do we as an industry tap into that talent? I mean, in my opinion, we've literally got an entire generation that's heading into trades and redefining what it is to be successful. How do we as an industry tap into that and show the value of our jobs and what we do?
Like I shared before, I think we need to start trying to get to them in high school, but the junior colleges have such great programs now. And I'm speaking from experience. Both of my sons have associate's degrees
Right.
in a trade. One's advanced industrial maintenance.
Okay.
And with that, he can go to work anywhere he wants to.
Yep.
And the value of an associate's degree in a trade is unbelievable now.
Yeah.
But I think we got to get to them in high school. And there's a lot of high schools that are doing a great job of steering those kids to that.
Right.
And I think that's the key to it.
Yeah.
But as water and wastewater industry, we need to have more hands-on with those type kids. And I don't think there will be anything wrong. Instead of them coming to the plant, us go to the school.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
I
think that's a great point. I mean, I think the talent's out there. I think, we maybe by one reason or another, we kind of fell into this industry, but I mean, I think that we quite frankly have a recruitment tool now. You go to work for utility, you talk about the benefits, the retirement, the salaries continue to step up and increase because we're being more valued, in our roles as certified operators.
Right.
So all those things are playing in our favor. We've got to really get out and tell the story, about what we're doing and the value that we bring to the industry and then the community as well. So,
right.
Yep.
Yep. When I started out, I'm making $6.43 an hour.
Wow. Yep.
And
it's a big difference from where you are now. For sure.
Yeah. The whole industry.
Yep.
I mean, it's not just me, but it's the whole industry is
right.
that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, I joke all the time about, as much as possible, we're a recession-proof industry because, it doesn't matter how bad it gets, people are still going to be drinking water and flushing the toilet. So,
That's right.
so that's good for us. But yeah, I think the public education, I think it's a huge industry challenge. Each utility is going to be different. How do you build that into your processes of educating the public on what we actually do? And, and it ties in, it's full circle. It goes back to, our training processes and things like that. So there's a lot to it, but that's all I've got. I think it's been a really good conversation. I think it's really, really good talking points, to really get people thinking about how to address some of the bigger industry challenges that we discussed. So, my closing, kind of just truly appreciation for boots on the ground operators, lived in that world for a period of time. I remember the nights of just not being able to go to sleep because,
Right.
that, there's somebody at the plant that's working overtime that's trying to keep everything moving. So I've got an extreme appreciation for the operation group in our industry. And, I just think that, conversations like this is really what kind of, I think, inspires all of us to know that, hey, we really are in an awesome career. We've got a lot of opportunities to grow it. And the more we can kind of, be out front and speak to the public about what we're doing and the value of it, the better off I think we'll be as an industry. So, yep. All right. Well, any
I appreciate you asking me to come out.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, thanks for your time.
Thanks.
And I think that works out great. So we'll close it out there. Okay.